Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Sylvain Rochon, and this is the series where I talk about, well, as I write my second book called Engineering Paradise, I just talk about the different chapters as I write them, and as I research and do different sections, and I lay it on paper. Now, in this one, we're going to be talking about the lawmaking ministry. I know it's not a traditional term, but I kind of like it. You know, words can change, titles can change, but essentially is the ministry that is responsible for creating laws, right? Normally in democracies, this is called the government, or at least the government is part of this lawmaking entity. You have Congress, and you have in the States, and you have the Chamber of Communes, which is with all the deputies in Canada, and so on and so forth. But we're doing away with a lot of that stuff in my concept and what I think would work really well. Because the ideology is that you want the population to be the ones deciding what should be law in different regions. Like I mentioned in the previous videos, you have the ministries that are responsible to execute, to be the executive and to dispatch the intentions of the individuals and the Canadians or the Americans or the Europeans or whatever nation is directed that way. And the way to actually do it is that you have your leader of the ministry of, the lawmaking ministry or ministry of law, if you will, and you have their staff. And in this case, I think it would be beneficial to have different subsections in smaller regions. Having a national ministry and having like regionals, like provinces or states, that because there's a lot. In particular, if you look at the United States of America, it's important for the Americans to have state laws, because that's the way they're structured. Like each state is its own nation in a way, right? And has its own way of doing things. So it's really important to have a ministry for each state, which is semi-independent from the national ministry. In different countries will have different realities, so I don't want to speculate on how it could be structured, but bottom line is that you want to segregate it according to what makes sense, and the different populations and groupings where you have a need for regulation and laws that apply to a smaller region than a national. And then what is very common as well as in particular for what we sometimes call counties and sometimes cities, to have a ministry entity that takes care of things like bylaws. Again, because smaller local areas sometimes have very specific realities to them. So you need to have smaller type of regulations that apply on a very local level. Just like what we currently have now. It's not very different. And it's structured that way because that's what made sense and that's what people wanted to do. Now, what we want to achieve with this ideal society is that we don't want this system to be cumbersome, and we want to update it, and we want to modernize it. We want it to be small. A lot of it needs to be automated. We want the people to actually be the power behind regulation. And you have the people that we vote into these positions of responsibility inside the ministries to be the geniuses that guide us to the right decisions according to what we want, right? So that's their goal. So they are serving us. They're not serving themselves. That's why they're put into positions according to a very specific voting system that creates no biases, and where there's no campaigns and there are no parties, no political parties. People don't run to take those positions and so on and so forth. It's all AI driven, and the best come to the top, and the experts in the field, in this case of law in general, are able to vote and to select because they have knowledge and the capacity to understand what or which candidate is in fact one of the best. Now, you don't ask a plumber, like who's going to be who's the best, geneticists, for example. You don't ask the geneticist like who's like among many who's going to be the best plumber. They don't know. unless they have experience specifically in that field. And that was covered in other videos prior, so I don't want to get back into that. But coming back to the lawmaking ministry, on a national level, you probably have the ministry. Ministry would be responsible for big things like constitutional law, because we do need something akin to a constitution to be put in place. Again, the purpose of this whole effort is to create an ideal society. An ideal society needs to have rules, just like what I stated earlier on in the first videos. That, well, the ideal situation is that if the people are the priorities, so we need to make sure that people have their basic needs met. So as part of the Constitution, the first thing we put in place is a Constitution that includes the right for everybody, every single individual and citizen, including, you know, immigration. We have to make like strict laws for people that are inside the country coming in and in integration, but are not yet citizens. These are details I don't want to get into, but you know what I mean. But in any case, now you want everybody to be able to have the basic needs, the basic physiological needs, like eat, drink, minimal stress, shelter, and you got. I mentioned the other video. It would be important if you want to have the people for the people governance. You need basic internet. So that's something that would be a part of the Constitution. And also, I would recommend something to add the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or something similar, or an updated version of that, as part of the Constitution as basic rights. You know, the right to free speech, and and so on and so forth. These can be added on a case by case, but I think that's really solid starting point for a constitution. Make sure that all these bases, these core basic stuff are covered. So that would be the first responsibility for the national ministry at the national level, and then it would be they would also be responsible for any kind of amendments to that, any kind of changes that would be requested by the people. And that's fine. Like this online system that I described, people can always, and there's always going to be subsets of people asking for things that would not be majority, not even in localities. But if there is a majority in one city about something that is local, for example, but everybody else doesn't care, well, that is a majority, and that's it. That reverts, that goes to the ministry of that locality, and they can handle it, right? Along with the people there, because they're the ones that care about it. And you have people that are in position in that local ministry, along with the AI and robots and things like that, that will have the motivation and the drive and the responsibility to make it happen, and can happen on the local level. But there's always going to be like people requesting things that makes no sense. There's always going to be people that are maybe ahead of their time. They've seen things that are not needed yet, but maybe in 10 years, but they'd be a minority because people don't see it. There's this whole system and discussion and awareness and education that happens within this online system, where people are sharing, just like a social network in a way, a national social network of citizens. They are speaking to the governing ministries, and information is sent to each ministries based on topic, contents, localities, and so on and so forth. The analysis is done all by AI and prioritized, and then the individuals in different ministries can handle it depending on their responsibilities. And again, once they see a proposal come in or a need, then they can use their smarts and use the AI and produce a solution. And in the lawmaking ministry, well, the solution would always be guidelines, rules, laws, and so on. Now, that's all well and good for the lawmaking ministry, because that's their job. That's what they're good at. That's what they do. They think about this, but there also is a very strong need, as covered previously, based on the topic at hand, for interministerial communications to happen. Like you can have like I don't know, maybe there is a request for the population or an event that comes up, like maybe a terrorist attack, which is very topical these days. that happens, because it could still happen in an ideal society. Just because it's structured in a very fair way, it doesn't mean that there isn't any people that have mental problems, people that are disgruntled. Things will still happen. It's not a utopia. A utopia, perfection doesn't exist. But these things can still happen. So, okay, well, there's a terrorist attack by someone in a city. And then the people don't necessarily need to react, but maybe they're feeding into the system some pictures, some images, and some different things. Well, a lot of it is going to go to the judiciary, and a lot of it is going to go to different areas. But as far as the lawmaking ministry, they're going to receive a bunch of information from the triage that happens online with the AI that are relevant to them making law. But then they have to coordinate with the security ministry about this particular topic, because their expertise is making law, not security. Right, so they have to communicate with this with the security ministry and the judiciary as well, right? So to figure out, okay, well, what's happening? What an investigation needs to happen. This is all transparently clear. Redundant, I know. Inside the online system, and these discussions, unless there's national security considerations, some of these communications can be, and for expediency purposes. But I don't see a problem in most of the communications between ministries to be entirely public, where everybody can see that. May not comment on it necessarily, but you can see what's going on, so people feel engaged and they see the work that's being done. Right? This is all very good for me and very good for everybody. And so you have all this communication between ministries to resolve an issue. Now, the lawmaking ministry then, based on valid information from the top minds that were elected in place that have strong expertise, plus the population that weigh in based on their experience or no experience into the system, their own opinions and feedbacks and fears and complaints and observations, videos, photos, all that stuff. That all comes into play. And then they can make, okay, do we need to make a new regulation, or is this just a fluke that went through and then really nothing? If we create a law, we're just going to restrict more freedoms, and it doesn't really help preventing a new event, for example. Let's imagine that's the discussion. Well, okay, like everybody, and this kind of ruling or this logic can be filtered down into the system to the people. And people of different levels of knowledge can feed back and say, no, you're wrong, we need to do it. We can decide together with calmer heads after the fact about what to do. But then again, you always have your executive that is there to be the genius, I guess, to recommend the best solution possible, along with AI and team that are also the best in the country. And people know this because they're not voted in because they were popular. They were voted in because of their actual credentials by a system and the population and the experts of the population, not only just anybody. It's not about favoritism. It's about getting it right. And getting it right sometimes means trying more than once. Sometimes, even with the best people and the best intentions, we can create a law or create a situation where 2 years later we figure out, well, plan B, in fact, this is not working as well as we'd like. Plan B would work better. Let's change it. Let's apply a change. And through a system that is dynamic like this, where there is a bit of collective memory and there is data memory and there is AI to get back, like what was plan B 2 years ago? That was another option that we were considering, but because plan A doesn't work. Well, let's re-engage that. Let's modify things. And again, all transparent, we can make it work as a society. So that's the way I see it functioning. Now, and then once for the lawmaking ministry, once they push back like a law, then there's discussion. There has to be a time of discussion for the population, for amendments, for comments, and all that stuff. it may be fed back or thrown away or executed as is. That's all good. And then the rest of it is just execution, where because it's a lawmaking ministry, it's important for the new laws to be known very, very quickly, very efficiently to all the other ministries, because those are new guidelines to run by. And these communications could be very clearly made. And then the other ministries would need to follow these amendments dynamically as well. That's why typically in governance, the legislative is usually found at the top, because everything else depends on that. But I think in an ideal society with the population and in power, we don't want to put a ministry above the others. It just happens to be its role to apply rules. That's all that's all really it is. But all the ministries have equal value because they are all needed to be unbiased and to make sure people have their basic needs met, right? And they can flourish. That's the whole purpose of it. Anyway, that's going to be it for the lawmaking ministry. I intend for the next video to be about the Ministry of Justice, which is also related, and then probably security or some other, and then we'll go on the other 7 afterwards, or 6. That's it for now. Thanks a lot for watching, and well, if you like to participate in some of these discussions or writing my book, you're quite welcome to communicate with me or to participate in some of my other videos as well. No problem. Bye bye for now.